I never thought I'd be the type of person to empty my husband's bank account and leave him stranded 2,000 miles from home. But there I was, staring at my phone screen at 3 in the morning, watching Derek's desperate text messages flood in while our joint account showed exactly $0.00. "Nina, please answer your phone. Something's wrong with the bank. My card isn't working. Emergency. Need $3,000 right now. Flight home is tomorrow. Why aren't you responding? This isn't like you." My hands weren't even shaking anymore. 3 weeks ago, they would have been. 3 weeks ago, I would have been frantically calling the bank, worried sick about my husband. But that was before I discovered the truth about our canceled family trip to Colorado. Let me go back to where this all started, because the woman sitting here in her empty house with changed locks and a suitcase packed for Hawaii is not the same woman who believed every lie Derek told her. It was a Tuesday evening in late August when Derek came home from work looking like someone had died. I was in the kitchen making his favorite dinner, chicken parmesan with garlic bread, because I'd gotten a small bonus at work and wanted to celebrate. We'd been planning our annual family reunion trip to Colorado for months, and I was so excited to finally meet his extended family. "Nina, we need to talk," Derek said, loosening his tie and avoiding my eyes. I turned off the stove, my stomach already dropping. Derek only used that tone when something was seriously wrong. "What's going on?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. He sat down heavily at our kitchen table, running his hands through his hair. "The trip to Colorado. We have to cancel it. The funds are just too low right now. I've been looking at our accounts all week, and we simply can't afford it." I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. We'd been saving for this trip for 8 months. I'd been working overtime, skipping lunches, even selling some of my old jewelry to contribute to our vacation fund. "But Derek, we saved over $10,000. How can we not afford it?" "You don't understand how expensive everything's gotten," he said, still not looking at me. "The flights alone would cost us $4,000. Then there's the hotel, rental car, food. We'd be broke for months afterward. I can't do that to us." I sat down across from him, reaching for his hand. "Honey, I know money's been tight, but this trip means so much to your family. Your mom has been planning activities for months. Tommy keeps asking when Uncle Derek is coming to see the mountains." Derek finally looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I couldn't quite identify. "I already called everyone. They understand. Family comes first. And being financially responsible is more important than a vacation." My heart broke for him. Derek had been stressed about money for months, always checking our accounts, always worried about spending. I'd felt guilty every time I bought coffee or got my hair cut. Seeing him sacrifice something he'd been looking forward to just made me love him more. "Okay," I said softly. "We'll stay home. Maybe we can plan something smaller for next year." Derek squeezed my hand. "You're amazing, Nina. I don't deserve you." Looking back now, that might have been the only honest thing he said that entire evening. "I'll pick up extra shifts at work," I offered. "Maybe some freelance projects on weekends. We can rebuild our savings faster than you think." "You don't have to do that," Derek said, but I could see the relief in his face. "I want to. We're a team, remember?" That night, I lay in bed making mental lists of ways to earn extra money. I could work overtime, take on weekend projects, maybe even sell my grandmother's china set that we never used. Derek seemed so defeated about our financial situation, and I was determined to help us get back on track. Derek fell asleep quickly, but I stayed awake planning. I thought about calling his sister Cassie to apologize for missing the reunion, but Derek had said he'd already handled all the family calls. I didn't want to make things worse by bringing up a painful subject. If I'd known then what I know now, I would have made that phone call. I would have asked Cassie directly about the trip cancellation. I would have checked our bank accounts myself instead of trusting Derek to handle everything. But I didn't know. I trusted my husband completely. And that trust was about to cost me everything I thought I knew about my marriage. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. If Derek was stressed about money, I was going to fix it. I'd always been good at my job as a marketing coordinator, but I'd never pushed for extra work because Derek made decent money in sales and we seemed comfortable. Now I realized I needed to step up. I got to the office early and went straight to my boss. "Mr. Peterson, I'd like to take on some additional projects. I told him. Weekends, evenings, whatever you have available. He looked surprised. Nina, you already do excellent work. You don't need to prove anything. It's not about proving myself. My husband and I are trying to rebuild our savings after some unexpected expenses. I could really use the extra income. Within an hour, I had 3 weekend projects lined up and permission to work late on weekdays. The extra money wouldn't be huge, but every little bit would help Derek feel less stressed about our finances. I called Derek during my lunch break to tell him the good news. Honey, I talked to Mr. Peterson about overtime. I can probably bring in an extra $800 this month. Nina, you don't have to do that, Derek said, but his voice sounded strange, distant. I want to help. We're in this together, right? Right, of course. I have to go. Big client call coming in. He hung up before I could say I loved him. That weekend, I worked both Saturday and Sunday, while Derek said he was meeting with potential clients. I spent 12 hours each day at the office, designing marketing campaigns and writing copy, thinking about how proud Derek would be when I handed him my first overtime check. When I got home Sunday evening, Derek was on the couch watching TV, looking more relaxed than he had in weeks. How did your client meetings go? I asked, collapsing next to him. Good. Really good. I think we might land the Morrison account. That's wonderful. See, things are already looking up. Derek smiled and pulled me closer. You're working too hard, though. I don't like seeing you so tired. It's temporary, just until we get back on our feet. Over the next 2 weeks, I threw myself into work like never before. I was at the office by 7 in the morning and rarely left before 8 at night. I took on freelance projects for other companies, working on my laptop at home until midnight. My eyes burned from staring at screens, and I lived on coffee and granola bars, but I felt good about contributing. Derek seemed to be handling the financial stress better, too. He was on his phone constantly, which he said were work calls about new accounts. He'd bought some new clothes, which surprised me since we were supposed to be cutting expenses, but when I mentioned it, he said his old shirts were getting worn out and he needed to look professional for clients. You're right, I said. I'm sorry. I know you wouldn't spend money we don't have. Exactly. I'm being very careful about every purchase. He started going out more in the evenings too, saying he was networking with potential clients at restaurants and coffee shops. I was usually too tired from my long work days to join him, which he said was probably for the best, since these were business meetings anyway. I miss spending time with you, I told him one Thursday night as he was getting ready to leave for another networking dinner. I miss you too, but this is important for our future. Once I land a few of these big accounts, you won't have to work so much overtime. I kissed him goodbye and went back to my laptop, working on a logo design for a small business that was paying me $200. Every dollar counted. The strangest thing was how much happier Derek seemed, despite our supposed money problems. He was whistling in the shower, laughing at TV shows, even talking about planning a weekend getaway once our finances improved. I was exhausted and stressed, but seeing him more optimistic made all my hard work feel worth it. On Friday afternoon, I was so tired I could barely focus on my computer screen. I'd been working 14-hour days for 2 weeks straight, and my body was starting to rebel. I decided to leave work early and surprise Derek with his favorite takeout dinner. But when I got home, Derek wasn't there. His car was gone, and there was a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to help Cassie with something. Back late. Don't wait up. I was disappointed, but not surprised. Derek was always helping his family with various projects. I ordered pizza for myself and settled in for another evening of freelance work. That's when my phone buzzed with a social media notification. I almost ignored it. I'd been so busy working that I hadn't checked social media in days, but something made me look at the screen. It was a tagged photo from Cassie, and my entire world was about to collapse. The photo loaded slowly on my phone, and for a moment I thought there must be some mistake. It showed Derek, Cassie, Helen, and little Tommy standing in front of a wooden sign that read, "Welcome to Colorado, colorful Colorado." They were all wearing hiking gear and huge smiles, with snow-capped mountains stretching behind them. The caption made my stomach drop. Family reunion time! So glad we could all make it. Uncle Derek is already planning our hike tomorrow. Tommy can't wait to see the waterfalls. I stared at the screen until my eyes watered. This had to be an old photo. Maybe Cassie had posted it by mistake, remembering last year's trip or something. But the timestamp showed it was posted 20 minutes ago, and Derek was wearing the new blue jacket I'd seen him buy just last week. My hand started shaking as I scrolled through Cassie's other recent posts. There was Derek carrying Tommy on his shoulders through what looked like a mountain trail. Derek and Helen laughing over breakfast at some rustic restaurant. Derek roasting marshmallows around a campfire with the whole family gathered around him. Every single photo was like a knife twisting in my chest. I called Derek immediately. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Derek. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." I hung up and called again. Straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. He was ignoring my calls. My husband was in Colorado with his family, living it up on the vacation he told me we couldn't afford, and he was deliberately not answering my phone calls. I scrolled back through the photos, studying every detail. The restaurant looked expensive, with white tablecloths and fancy lighting. Derek's hiking gear was all brand new, boots, backpack, even a professional-looking camera hanging around his neck. This wasn't some budget family trip. This was exactly the kind of vacation we'd been planning, except I wasn't in a single photo. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I stared at the message, sent from Colorado while he was supposedly helping Cassie with something local. The lie was so casual, so automatic. How long had he been lying to me like this? I called Cassie directly. Maybe there was some explanation. Maybe Derek had surprised them with a last-minute visit, using money from somewhere else. Maybe I was misunderstanding everything. Cassie's phone also went straight to voicemail. I tried Helen next. Same thing. They were all ignoring me. The entire family was in on this. I sat on my couch in our empty house, surrounded by the freelance work I'd been doing to help our supposed financial crisis, and tried to piece together what had really happened. Derek had lied about canceling the trip. He'd let me work myself into exhaustion, trying to help with money problems that apparently didn't exist. He'd watched me skip meals and sell my grandmother's jewelry while he was secretly planning a family vacation without me. But why? Why would he exclude me from a family trip? I'd always gotten along well with his family. Helen had seemed to like me at Christmas. Cassie and I weren't close, but we were friendly enough. Tommy adored me and always asked when Aunt Nina was coming to visit. Unless they'd never wanted me there in the first place. I thought about all those phone calls Derek had been taking, the ones he said were work calls about new clients. They'd probably been planning calls with his family, discussing hiking routes and restaurant reservations and how to keep the trip secret from me. The networking dinners he'd been going to weren't business meetings. They were probably planning sessions, or maybe he'd just been avoiding me because he felt guilty about the lies. And the new clothes, the relaxed attitude, the whistling in the shower, it all made sense now. Derek wasn't stressed about money. He was excited about his upcoming vacation. I grabbed my laptop and did something I hadn't done in months. I logged into our joint bank account to see exactly how much money we actually had. What I saw made me gasp out loud. Our savings account, which should have had over $10,000, was nearly empty, but it wasn't empty because we were broke. It was empty because Derek had been systematically withdrawing money for weeks. Large withdrawals labeled travel expenses and family trip and Colorado vacation. He hadn't just lied about canceling the trip. He'd spent our entire vacation fund on a trip that didn't include me. I scrolled through more transactions, my anger building with each entry. Hotel reservations, airline tickets, rental car, restaurant charges, even shopping trips for new hiking gear. Derek had spent over $8,000 on this family vacation while telling me we were too broke to afford it. And I'd been working overtime like a fool, trying to help him with financial problems that didn't exist. I spent the next hour going through every transaction in our accounts, and what I discovered made me feel sick. Derek hadn't just spent our vacation savings. He'd also dipped into our emergency fund, the money we'd set aside for real emergencies like job loss or medical bills. $3,000 gone. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was seeing a pattern I'd been too trusting to notice before. For months, Derek had been making small withdrawals, labeled as business expenses or client dinners. I'd never questioned them because he handled all our finances and I trusted him completely. Now I realized those business expenses had been funding his family's lifestyle. There were charges at expensive restaurants on nights when Derek told me he was working late, shopping trips to outdoor gear stores, even a charge for what looked like a spa day for Helen. Derek had been playing the generous son and brother with our money while making me feel guilty for buying a $12 lunch. I remembered all the times over the past few months when I'd wanted to do something, go out with friends, buy a new dress, get my hair done, and Derek had made comments about money being tight. "Maybe next month," he'd say. "We need to be more careful with spending." Meanwhile, he was dropping hundreds of dollars on his family without telling me. The credit card statements were even worse. Derek had taken cash advances totaling over $2,000. We weren't just broke, we were in debt. And he'd let me work myself into exhaustion, thinking I was helping solve our financial problems, when really I was just enabling his lies. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark living room, trying to process what I'd learned. My husband had been financially manipulating me for months. He'd made me feel guilty about every small purchase, while secretly funding an expensive family vacation that excluded me. He'd watched me skip meals to save money, watched me work 14-hour days, watched me sell my grandmother's jewelry, and never once felt guilty enough to tell me the truth. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about respect, trust, and the fact that Derek clearly didn't see me as an equal partner in our marriage. I was just the woman who worked extra hours to fund his real family's fun. I thought about calling my sister Lauren, but what would I say? My husband lied about canceling our vacation and went without me while I worked overtime to help with fake money problems. It sounded crazy even in my own head. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I opened my laptop again and started researching how to open a new bank account online. If Derek could move money around without telling me, I could do the same thing. Within an hour, I had a new checking account in my name only. The bank's website made it easy. Just a few forms, a photo of my driver's license, and an initial deposit from my personal checking account that Derek didn't have access to. Then I did something that 3 weeks ago would have been unthinkable. I logged back into our joint accounts and started transferring money. Not just from our joint checking, but from Derek's personal savings account too. As his wife, I had legal access to it, something Derek had insisted on when we got married for emergencies. Well, this felt like an emergency. I moved every penny we had. The remaining vacation fund, what was left of our emergency savings, Derek's personal account, even the small amount in our joint checking. I transferred it all to my new account, watching the numbers change on my screen with a strange sense of calm. Derek's accounts now showed exactly what mine had shown for months when he was controlling everything, $0 and 0 cents. I wasn't stealing from him. This was our money, money I'd contributed to with my salary and my overtime work, money he'd been spending on his family without my knowledge or consent. I was just taking control of it the same way he had. As I finished the last transfer, I felt something I hadn't felt in months, powerful. For the first time since we'd gotten married, I was the one making financial decisions. I was the one in control. My phone rang, making me jump. Derek's name appeared on the screen. I stared at it, knowing that in a few days, when Derek tried to pay for his hotel or his flight home, he'd discover what I'd done. He'd realize that his trusting, hard-working wife wasn't as naive as he thought. The phone kept ringing. Derek was probably calling to tell me more lies about working late or helping Cassie. Maybe he'd even try to sound homesick, telling me how much he missed me while he was literally on vacation with his family. I let it go to voicemail. I had planning to do. The next 3 days passed in a strange bubble of calm. I went to work, came home, and waited. I'd turned my phone to silent after Derek's voicemail, which was exactly what I'd expected, a rambling message about missing me and some fake story about helping Cassie move furniture. His voice had that forced cheerfulness he used when he was lying, the same tone he'd used when telling me about our financial problems. I didn't listen to the whole message. I deleted it halfway through. During those 3 days, I made some important changes. I called a locksmith and scheduled an appointment for Friday afternoon. I researched divorce lawyers and bookmarked 3 websites. I even started looking at apartments in different neighborhoods, places Derek would never think to look for me. But mostly, I waited. I knew Derek's travel plans because I'd helped him research the trip months ago, back when I thought I was going too. The family reunion was scheduled for 5 days, which meant Derek would be trying to fly home on Friday. He'd probably wait until the last minute to book his return flight, the way he always did, thinking he could just use his credit card at the airport. On Wednesday evening, I allowed myself to look at Cassie's social media again. There were more photos, of course. Derek teaching Tommy how to fish in a crystal-clear mountain lake. The whole family hiking through aspen groves with golden leaves. Derek and Helen sharing a laugh over what looked like an expensive dinner at some mountain resort. In every photo, Derek looked completely relaxed and happy. This was a man who was supposed to be stressed about money, worried about our financial future. Instead, he looked like he was having the time of his life spending money we supposedly didn't have. The photos made me angry all over again, but it was a cold, focused anger now. I wasn't the heartbroken wife anymore, crying over her husband's betrayal. I was a woman with a plan. Thursday night, I packed a suitcase. Not with Derek's things, those could wait. I packed for myself, choosing my favorite clothes and the jewelry Derek didn't know I'd kept when I told him I'd sold everything. I was going to need a vacation after this was all over, and I'd already decided where I wanted to go: Hawaii. Specifically, a luxury resort in Maui that Derek had always said was too expensive for people like us. I'd looked it up online and discovered that a week there would cost about the same amount Derek had spent on his secret Colorado trip. It seemed like perfect justice. Friday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I went to work as usual, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every few minutes, I checked my phone, waiting for the text I knew was coming. At 2:47 p.m., it finally arrived. "Nina, emergency. Need you to transfer $3,000 to my account. As soon as possible. Flight got canceled and need hotel money. Family is counting on me. Please, hurry." I read the message 3 times, marveling at Derek's nerve. Even in crisis, he was lying. His flight wasn't canceled. He just didn't have money to pay for it because he'd spent everything on his secret vacation. And family is counting on me was rich, considering he'd excluded me from that same family gathering. I thought about all the responses I could send. I could tell him I knew about the trip. I could explain exactly how I'd discovered his lies. I could list every transaction he'd hidden from me, every time he'd made me feel guilty about money, while he was secretly spending our savings. Instead, I typed 4 simple words: "Check your account." I hit send and felt a rush of satisfaction so intense it almost made me dizzy. My phone started ringing immediately. Derek's name flashed on the screen, and I could practically feel his panic through the phone. He'd just discovered that all his accounts were empty. He was stranded at an airport in Colorado with no money, no way to get home, and no idea how this had happened. I turned off my phone and left work early. The locksmith was already waiting when I got home. A friendly older man who didn't ask questions about why I needed every lock in the house changed. While he worked, I started boxing up Derek's belongings. Not angrily, not frantically, just methodically packing his clothes, his books, his collection of golf magazines. As I folded his shirts, including the new ones he'd bought for his secret vacation, I felt nothing but cold determination. The woman who would have cried over these clothes, who would have held them to her face to smell his cologne, was gone. By evening, Derek's things were neatly packed in boxes by the front door, and every lock in the house had been changed. My phone, when I finally turned it back on, showed 47 missed calls and dozens of text messages. I didn't read any of them. I spent Saturday morning doing something I hadn't done in years, shopping for myself without guilt. I walked through the mall with Derek's credit card, the one connected to his personal account that now had $0, and bought everything I'd been denying myself for months. A new dress for my Hawaii trip. Expensive skincare products. A pair of designer sunglasses that cost more than Derek used to let me spend on groceries in a week. With each purchase, I felt a little more like myself again. Like the confident woman I'd been before, Derek convinced me that wanting nice things was selfish. The credit card worked fine, of course. Derek might have emptied his bank accounts, but the credit card company didn't know that yet. By the time they figured it out, I'd be long gone. I also made some important phone calls. First, to a divorce lawyer named Patricia Chen, who specialized in financial misconduct cases. Her consultation fee was expensive, but after hearing my story, she agreed to take my case. "What your husband did is called financial abuse," she explained over the phone. "Hiding assets, lying about income, making you feel guilty about normal expenses while he spends freely. It's more common than you'd think, and it's absolutely grounds for divorce." "I moved all our money to my own account," I admitted. "Was that legal?" "Completely legal. It's marital property, and you have every right to protect yourself from further financial manipulation. In fact, I'd recommend you document everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, those social media photos. We'll need evidence of his deception." My second call was to a real estate agent. Our house was in both our names, but I wanted to start the process of selling it. I couldn't afford the mortgage payments on my own, and besides, the house held too many memories of Derek's lies. "The market's good right now," the agent told me. "A house like yours should sell quickly, especially if you're willing to price it competitively." "I want it gone as fast as possible," I said. My third call was to a travel agent. "I want to book a trip to Hawaii," I told her. "First-class flight, oceanfront suite, the works. Money is no object." While she put together my dream vacation, I finally allowed myself to check the messages Derek had been sending. There were dozens of them, and reading through them was like watching someone's mental breakdown in real time. The first few were confused. "Nina, something's wrong with the bank. Can you call them?" Then angry. "What did you do? This isn't funny." Then desperate. "Please, I'm stuck here. Cassie had to pay for my hotel room. This is humiliating." Then manipulative. "I know you're upset about something, but we can work this out. Just transfer enough money for me to get home and we'll talk." And finally, pathetic. "Nina, please. I'm sorry for whatever I did. I love you. Just help me get home." I deleted every message without responding. The locksmith had done excellent work. When Derek eventually made it home, however, he managed that, he'd find himself locked out of his own house. I'd already arranged for his boxes to be left on the front porch with a note directing him to contact my lawyer. Sunday afternoon, I did something that felt wonderfully symbolic. I went to the bank and closed our joint accounts. The teller, a young woman with kind eyes, processed the paperwork without question. "Will your husband need access to these funds?" she asked. "No," I said firmly. "He's forfeited that right." I also opened a safety deposit box and stored copies of all our financial documents, Derek's lying text messages, and screenshots of Cassie's social media posts. Patricia Chen had been right. I needed evidence, and I was going to be thorough. That evening, I sat in my living room with a glass of wine, looking at the empty spaces where Derek's things used to be. The house felt bigger somehow, like it could breathe again. I'd lived here for 3 years, but it had never really felt like mine. Derek had made all the decorating decisions, chosen all the furniture, even decided which photos to hang on the walls. Now it was just me, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. My phone buzzed with a new message, but it wasn't from Derek. It was from the travel agent. "Your Hawaii trip is confirmed. First-class flight leaves Tuesday morning. You're going to love the resort. Oceanfront suite with private balcony, spa services included. Have a wonderful vacation." I smiled and raised my wine glass in a toast to my empty living room. Derek was probably still in Colorado, begging his family for money and trying to figure out how his trusting wife had outsmarted him. But I wasn't his trusting wife anymore. I was a woman with a plan, a bank account full of money, and a first-class ticket to paradise. And Derek was about to discover just how much his lies had cost him. I'm sitting on my hotel balcony in Maui, watching the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in shades of gold and pink that no camera could ever capture. My feet are propped up on the railing, a tropical drink in my hand, and my phone shows the photo I just posted to social media, the first post I've made in months. The caption reads, "New view, new life. Sometimes the best trips are the ones you take alone." It's been 6 weeks since I left Derek stranded in Colorado, and my life has transformed in ways I never imagined possible. The woman who used to work 14-hour days to help with fake financial problems is gone, replaced by someone who knows her own worth and refuses to accept anything less. The divorce papers were filed 3 weeks ago. Patricia Chen turned out to be everything I'd hoped for in a lawyer: sharp, thorough, and completely unsympathetic to Derek's sob story about being confused and making mistakes. When Derek finally made it back from Colorado, Cassie had to wire him money for a bus ticket, which apparently caused a huge family fight. He found his belongings on the porch and a legal notice taped to the door. He tried calling me hundreds of times those first few days. When I finally answered, just once, his voice was a mixture of rage and desperation. "Nina, you can't just steal our money and disappear. This is insane." "I didn't steal anything," I'd said calmly. "I took control of marital assets that you were misusing. There's a difference." "Misusing? I spent money on a family trip." "A family trip that excluded your wife while you lied to her about being broke. A trip you funded by making me feel guilty about buying lunch while you spent thousands behind my back." The silence on his end told me everything I needed to know. Derek had never expected me to figure it out, let alone fight back. "We can work this out," he'd said finally. "I made mistakes, but we can fix this." "No, Derek, we can't." "You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. You chose to lie to me for months. You chose to exclude me from your family. You chose to manipulate me financially while living it up on my hard work. Those weren't mistakes. That was who you really are." I'd hung up and blocked his number. The house sold faster than anyone expected. Apparently, Derek had been behind on the mortgage payments despite telling me our finances were fine. Another lie in a long list of lies. The sale barely covered what we owed, but I didn't care. I was free. I found a beautiful apartment in the Arts District downtown, the kind of place Derek would have said was too trendy or too expensive. It has huge windows, exposed brick walls, and a view of the city skyline. For the first time in my adult life, I'm living somewhere that feels completely mine. My job situation improved too. When Mr. Peterson heard about my divorce, he offered me a promotion I didn't even know was available. "You've been working like 3 people for months," he said. "It's time we paid you accordingly." The raise was substantial enough that I could afford my new apartment and still save money. But the best part of my new life is the peace. I wake up every morning knowing that no one is lying to me, manipulating me, or making me feel guilty for existing. I buy coffee without calculating whether I can afford it. I make plans with friends without checking with anyone else first. I'm learning to trust my own instincts again, and they're pretty good. Derek's family, predictably, turned on him once they realized his financial irresponsibility affected them too. Cassie posted a long social media rant about family members who make promises they can't keep, after Derek apparently couldn't pay her back for his bus ticket home. Helen stopped speaking to him entirely when she found out he'd been lying about money for months. Tommy, sweet little Tommy, was the only one who seemed genuinely sad about the situation. Cassie told me through a mutual friend that he keeps asking when Aunt Nina is coming to visit again. That breaks my heart a little, but I can't fix Derek's relationship with his family. That's his mess to clean up. As I watch the waves crash against the shore below my balcony, I think about the woman I used to be, always working, always sacrificing, always putting Derek's needs before my own. That woman believed that love meant making yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. She thought that being a good wife meant accepting lies and manipulation with a smile. I know better now. Real love doesn't require you to diminish yourself. Real partnership doesn't involve financial secrets and deliberate exclusion. Real respect doesn't come with conditions and manipulation. The sun has set completely now, and the ocean stretches endlessly ahead of me, dark and full of possibilities. Tomorrow I fly home to my new apartment, my new life, and my new understanding of what I deserve. Derek taught me a valuable lesson, though I doubt he meant to. The best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's living well.